welcome to this week's episode of Hallow Weekly. So this week's episode is titled Still Scary After All These Years. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to talk about this week is basically anything, I think we agreed, 70s and backwards.
Yes.
From if it's still
70s back to the beginning of time.
If it's scary,
I don't know why we're talking why that was like that's a huge block of time, but we were I think 80s just felt like its own thing. So we were like,
yeah, anything past that, like, yeah,
that's more like
it's just we just set some rules. We
right, exactly.
That's it's as simple as that. We had some rules.
If there's a chance that the first time you saw anything we're discussing on VHS, then it would qualify.
All right, so this week's episode still scary after all these years. So,
well, let's be honest. Let's tell them so because I think the framework here is we didn't want to do just movies, right? So
no.
We were trying to think of the way I thought about it was I was like trying to think of what was still actually going to have the capacity to scare people and not date in a way that like some things that are so glorious, like and like this really bothers me about like the fact that I have yet to watch the original version of King Kong with someone who was like 20 years or younger who didn't just laugh hysterically all the way through that glorious movie because it just seemed dated, right?
Yeah.
So like I was looking for things that even if in their entirety weren't going to be scary, like I was looking for things that had something in them where even if you introduced it to someone who was not familiar with it at all, there would be a moment or two or 10 or whatever inside of it where they'd be like, whoa, shit, that was
still holds
scary
up.
Or freaky.
Exactly. So let's just jump into it. What do you got?
Okay. So, well, yeah, but okay, you know me. I'm really curious about like, there were a few things that like I was going to go with and then I had to bail on. So I'm just going to start with something that I was going to go with and then I bailed on like at the last second. I was totally going to go with Jack the Ripper.
Oh yeah.
I was totally going to be like just the whole Jack the Ripper concept.
Yeah.
That's still scary right after all these years, right? And I'm like I'm so passionate about because I remember this old horror anthology called just Ripper, I think. It was probably Tor horror books, maybe 80s. And when I bought anthologies when I was younger, like I was always disappointed by like 2/3 of them.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, you find like the 3 or 4 great things or like the name, the reason you bought it was this one author's in it or whatever. There's some really strong editors who do a better job, especially like Ellen Datlow or someone like now who bats like really great percentage. But like, I opened this book and the first story was gold, and the second story was gold, the third story was gold. I was like, wait, what's happening? Why is this so good, right? And it was all based around like these different takes on Jack the Ripper, and there's
that's cool.
One story in there. Well, I mean, there's tons, but there's this one that always stuck with me called "The Game in the Pope's Head," and it's by Gene Wolfe, and it's like these people possibly role playing. Like it's so trippy. Like it's like a huge mindfuck. But they're role playing horrible things in history, but you can't tell if they're actually traveling there or taking on those people while they play them or whatever. And then it just gets dominated by Jack the Ripper.
Gotcha.
And they end up like a Whitechapel, like whatever. And this one person at the end of the story tries to pray and they just get their throat torn out. Right? And I was like, my mind was blown that the Jack the Ripper concept, for all kinds of reasons, like we don't know what he looks like, we don't know what he is necessarily, like whatever. The concept is so, you can hang almost anything on it. So these writers were able to do just these amazing, someone went just like straight historical and it was like almost like reading newspaper reports. Some had like Jack the Ripper traveling back and forth in time, like Harlan Ellison did a great story
cool
based
concept.
on that. Oh my, yeah, it was amazing. Like
That
he's
is
getting
so cool.
manipulated from the future by the city that uses him to kill people for entertainment, and they it's amazing.
Jesus.
It's so amazing, right? So like, I'm really like was wanted this to be like one of the ones that I led with, and the only reason that I threw it out was there was also just so much cheese involved in it, and so many things that went wrong, and so many things that were. So I felt like if I was not picking a book or a movie or something, but I was picking a concept, like there's just so much that isn't scary anymore.
Yeah.
Just from getting overplayed or badly done or whatever. You know what
Jack the Ripper's a good one. That's a
Nick's like he's in. Forget it.
yeah. I mean,
You're not allowed to
well,
drop
I mean, I'm just thinking about because there's a really fun board game, Letters from Whitechapel,
Yes.
and just playing as Jack or the police, like when it gets down to like the last few turns, you're like, oh man, like you're sitting there like, I need a cigarette. I don't even smoke, and I need a cigarette. I gotta figure this shit out.
Right. I mean, it's just it's drenched with creepiness, right? And
Even just the setting, you think of just like that old English, like it's always rainy for
Totally.
some reason,
and all the possibilities of the people who were involved. Like that's one of the, like the only thing more terrifying than someone holding sway over your town as a serial killer, making like your life miserable because you don't know if you're safe or not, is the fact that the authorities might be not interested in catching him or in on it, or it might be a group of people instead of one, or and who knows, it could be all these things with him, right? Like
that's a good one. That's a deep one.
well, and then the other thing, like I got to give a shout out. There's an amazing newish book. I think it's called "They All Love Jack," which is like kind of dives in. I mean, it does everything because it's like 900 pages long, but it dives into the Ripper concept. It has a solve at the end, which is interesting. The author spent an enormous chunk of time on this concept, but he also really dives into what they call the Ripperologists, like the people who study it. And he's got some really harsh things to say about a lot of those people. But one thing that I look for in a really, really terrifying book, and this is like basically a nonfiction book, but like this is the kind of book where you can't listen to this audiobook in public. Like if you're walking and you're listening to this on your phone, you're in trouble because it's so horrifying. Like every 2 pages, because he's setting the concept of Jack the Ripper in. He's like, you think Jack the Ripper was bad? Look at the times he lived in. And then he tells you how these people lived and how crimes were going then, and how the society was like the 1% or whatever you want to call it was exploiting the masses, like whatever, and not caring how they die or when they die or what numbers they die or what they die of, like, and like I'm reading this and I was imagining like this is an audiobook. Like if you walked into like, Whole Foods and you were listening to this, you would be like ejected. Right? Like,
Can't handle it.
No, they would hear like 3 paragraphs come out of your phone and they'd be like, no.
You're like, all right, please leave.
Which is a sign of a great book, right? So,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. Okay, so but Jack the Ripper.
So I mean, okay, whatever. I mean, maybe he's in.
I think he's still in.
I just thought
I would say so.
I thought it was
Honorable mention
honorable mention. Okay,
for Jack the Ripper. So,
was there anything you threw away that's not coming up that you really regret?
well, as much as a fanboy as I am for, like Frankenstein and Dracula and all that stuff, like I think they're more cool than they are scary now. Like I don't look at pictures of Frankenstein and think, oh my god, like look at that thing, or Dracula. I'm like, oh my god, no.
Sadly.
Yeah, I know, but I almost sort of like admire them now just because of how like classic they are. So they didn't make the list as scary, but though I still like to bundle them up with the Universal pack for actually scary to kick it off. I still think the Unmasking of the Phantom still holds up.
Totally.
Still holds up. I mean, even if you don't watch the whole fucking movie, like you just see that part where what's her face is like slowly creeping up behind him. He's just playing around, and then she flips it off. I remember seeing that for the first time back home. There was like a little museum, and they had like a little screener room of like the beginning of film, like that era of stuff. And it was just like old timey black and white stuff, and then all of a sudden they just showed that clip, and I was like, what the fuck? Wait a minute.
Right.
You can't just throw that into the mix.
Right. Totally. Well, they just assumed they could because it's old. So
yeah, they were like, "Oh yeah, this is old timey film. It's dated. It's not gonna be that."
Right.
And I saw that, and like that. I mean, I saw that. God, how many years ago? And that stuck with me.
yeah, like the scenes from the Phantom, like any horror movie montage of old timey shit that I see, the Phantom clips stand out against all,
Even like the
other
one
stuff.
scene
the Mask
that-
of the Red Death.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Which still stands out because that was like one of the I believe it was like one of the first colory like technicolory kind of scenes. Like even now just holds out like vibrant red of him just like slowly walking down the staircase. It just looks so
Amazing.
It looks so cool. And that's even part of the reason why I still love Batman Returns. Because he reuses some of those clips. When you say when Bruce and Selena are in the little ballroom, you see what someone in the Mask of Red Death coming down the stairs. Which, funny enough, I love Batman Returns, but this is a horror podcast. Funny enough, one of the villains who Christopher Walken plays Max Shrek. Shrek, right?
Shrek.
Like the
Right.
ogre.
Right.
Plays
Totally.
Max Shrek,
Yes.
who also made my list for Still Scary. And Nosferatu.
Right.
Wow, that was a cool
That
was a cool segue.
That is a great segue. That's amazing that is. I mean, but that just shows how influential, like the stuff that really stands out is. Like people who are working. Yeah, I mean, Tim Burton doesn't really work in horror, obviously, but he's influenced heavily from
Yes.
like the imagery of like
Exactly.
and that shows like they do call outs to that stuff all the time. And this is like what, like
That was like 90s.
80 years later.
Yeah. So that brought me to my the first one that I thought of was the unveiling of the Phantom, who I still bundle in the Universal Horror.
Yes. Is he in?
He's in my list.
Sweet. Okay.
He's in my list.
Yeah, and I totally agree. That's an amazing choice.
Just because I just remember like seeing that. Like it hasn't left my head.
Right.
So obviously it did something to me where I remember that.
Right.
That image.
And I can't even imagine now we're saturated with jump scares every 2 minutes in badly made like horror movies now, but I can't even imagine that had to be like one of the first jump scare examples.
Oh yeah.
Right,
I couldn't imagine like seeing that.
And seeing that in real time just must have been
Yeah.
terrifying. Like, and I think
you wouldn't
Lon
expect
Chaney knew it. Like
I'm sure he did.
I just had a feeling like when he was doing it that he was like that he's like I'm gonna scare the shit out of entire country.
I wonder if like when he finished his makeup, like if he winked at himself. Like, he's like, I'm gonna kill it today on set.
If he didn't, he should have.
Well, even you know what I do think it scared the shit out of everyone because even in like the I don't think they showed his face in the promotional stuff
Right.
going into the film.
Yeah,
so no one fucking knew what to expect. So then you see that and you're like, ugh,
Right.
that ain't good. But going back to it, I remember being like I forget how old I was, but I remember seeing like the imagery of like Nosferatu and being like, oh fuck,
Yep.
like that. Because like I remember once I saw that. It was him coming out of the coffin. That scared the shit out of me. And then him standing in the doorway with like his arms, with his, his shoulders kind of propped up, and then like it just scared the hell out of me. And I still think like if I saw him,
Right.
if I saw Orlok, right? Is that the?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I don't want to keep calling him Nosferatu though.
Wait, before we move on though, I got to tell you, like this is in my top like I mean I have a list of things that I just watch if I can at least once a year, which the old Phantom of the Opera is on the list. And the end scene is this amazing moment where the mob is chasing the Phantom
Oh yeah.
and they corner him, right? And they're gonna tear him apart. They're just bloodthirsty, like revengeful, like whatever. And he reaches in his coat or something and pulls out his hand like he's holding a bomb, a grenade, a Molotov cocktail, like something, anything. And the entire crowd shrinks back. Like everyone freezes and stops and goes backwards. And he opens his hand and shows him he's got fucking nothing in it and laughs and then they tear him apart. And it's one of the most amazing. It's not even how they wanted the movie to end, by the way, but it's one of the most amazing like examples of the fact that, like you were saying, that's a scary moment. Like that, the entire character of the Phantom, that whole last moment is premised on the fact that he can scare people with nothing. Like he's so scary that he can just scare people.
I was like, I don't
with
trust
zero.
him. I don't trust him.
Exactly. So I mean, I just think that's just an amazing example of like still being scary, like not just across the years, but just even inside the concept itself. Like,
Well, even talking
it
about
was built on that.
Even talking about like, you know, just imagery like that, like even just like the silhouette in Nosferatu when he's like slowly going up the staircase. Like how many like horror conventions do you see use that image for that thing? Like it's like that's how great it is. Like you just see his long creepy ass nails.
Totally.
And the way he's just like kind of hunched going to the door, like
Amazing.
like that still today is fucking terrifying.
I think one of the best, and I could be wrong about this, and Sam Raimi can feel free to call me and explain to how I'm wrong about this. But like, I think one of the best possible call outs that I've ever seen is like, so he's all lengthened and like stretched out as this character. And there's this great moment in Drag Me to Hell when she's like locked herself in the room and footsteps come to the door and stop. And she sees like feet, and then she sees the shadow of hands, and the shadows just elongate and come into the room and try to grab her, and it looks exactly like his creepy long Nosferatu arms, like
just going to
amazing.
That's a good movie.
It's
In 100 years, we'll talk about Drag Me to Hell, the Evil Dead, and all of his his catalog. So yeah, I think those two are still very striking. They're not my top movie of that still kind of freaked me out though. But those were definitely, I think, great to mention because they still hold up.
You got me so curious about what your top.
I know. Well, okay, so now that we're not just talking about horror movies. We're talking all things horror.
Right.
What are some books that really fucked you up?
Okay, so I have this need to do a shout out to one of the books that did it first. That I think was like enormously influential on like so much of the stuff that came after, right? So like there's this book called The Black Spider. It's German. It's from like, I don't know, 1840 something or whatever. And basically there's a couple of reasons why this book is probably, this book is definitely authentically scary now, right? People who read this book now, if they can get past like that dumb block over like old timey sounding language or whatever, like if they just gave it a chance, like it's authentically frightening. And there's a couple of reasons for it, but one of the main reasons is the guy who wrote it, this Jeremiah Godelf, however you say his name, his family and him, I think, really believed in the bad things that he wrote in the book.
Oh, so
they thought it was just authentic. Not that necessarily it happened, but that it is something like it did happen, and it could happen, and it possibly is still happening. Right? and so you're combining someone with like an incredible writing talent with actual belief, which is almost impossible to do now. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's Stephen King most likely does not believe in Randall Flagg or whatever. But
yeah,
so basically what happens in this book, the short version is that there's a town, and the people in this town are living a horrible medieval lifestyle, except for the few people who are in charge, and they live in the castle, and they're like knights and lords and blah, blah, whatever. And the one guy who's like most dominant in the town, he's like the worst of all of them. And he decides that it's too hot on his estate. So he wants a tree-lined path on his road. So he tells the peasants, you got to move all these trees from down where you live up to my estate. And they're like broke, and they have one horse, and like this would take us a year.
Get right on it.
Yeah, right, exactly. And he's like, all right, well, have it done by next week, or else, there will be horrible consequences for you and your families, or whatever. And they can't, there's no way for them to pull this off, right?
Yeah.
Even if they wanted to, and they do, as they're scared to death of this guy, like they can't do it. So this incredibly strange green devilish looking guy shows up. He's a hunter. He's not part of the town. No one's seen this guy before. And he says, I can make this happen for you guys. And all I need is one unbaptized infant baby. Right. So they're like, no, thanks. So then they decide they're going to make this tree thing happen themselves. And it just gets harder and harder and harder. And it's possibly because this green devil guy is working against them behind the scenes because their lives already suck. But now everything gets worse, right? Now it rains every day and there's mudslides.
Jesus.
So this girl goes, who lives in the town, she goes, you're all cowards. This is ridiculous. Like, I'm going to make a deal with this guy because I'm sick of living in misery, and you guys, every plan you come up with always fails. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to make a deal with this guy, but the second any baby in this town is born, we're going to baptize them right away. Like, boom, they're born, hit them with water. That way he can't collect, right?
Yeah.
So screw him and screw the guy on his estate.
Trying to get the best of both worlds.
Right, exactly. So the hunter meets her. Everyone else flees. She's the one brave enough to stay to make this contract, right? And basically he says, fantastic. I'm sure you're people of honor. I'm sure that you'll never go back on your word.
I'm sure you won't baptize babies quickly.
Right. I'm totally going to make this happen for you. And he leans down and gives her a kiss on her cheek and seals the deal.
Very unsolicited.
Right, exactly. Very unsolicited. So the next day, the estate is all taken care of. Trees are all up, amazing, right? The people are happy. And then the first baby is due to be born. And when the baby gets born, they baptize it right away. And as soon as they baptize it, the place on this girl's cheek starts to burn and itch where she got kissed, right? So then another baby's born, and it starts to burn more and fester more and turns into the shape of a black spider.
Oh.
Right? So then another baby gets baptized, it's been a long time since I read it, but basically the next time one gets baptized, she's in a fever. She feels sick. This thing is burning her. She wants to grab the baby and give it to the hunter so that her pain will stop. But they shoo her away and keep the baby and baptize it. And when that happens, this thing on her face bursts open and little black spiderlings pour out of it.
Oh, that's
and
gross.
go all throughout the town and start killing sheep, cattle, wreaking havoc, causing mayhem. Like
that is
the
awesome.
entire town gets infected from this open sore that just pours out. Like
that makes me want to throw up. That's so gross.
Right. And so she is just in this fever to get this baby to the hunters.
Even with like a hole in her cheek, she's still like, "Hey guys."
She knows the only way the pain's going to stop is if the contract is sealed. She realizes what the story is telling you is that
jump
you
in a
can't cheat.
volcano.
You can't cheat.
Spiders came out. My
But this
face.
is so okay. So I'm so glad you said that, because one of the reasons that I brought this up is this is like. So everyone knows this feeling where you're watching a horror movie, you're reading a horror book, and the character's doing something, and you're like when you're watching It Follows. Like the first time the rules become apparent, you're thinking to yourself, well, what would I do? Like, how do I get out of this, right?
Yeah.
And then something comes to you, you're like, I just do this, right?
Yeah.
And in a lot of movies, in a lot of horror things, that's what you think of. The one obvious thing that you should do is never really addressed.
Yeah.
Or it's dressed like a half-assed way, like or they cop out, right? So
Or
it
break
happens to
rules,
everybody when you're watching one of these things, right? Well, in this one, Christine goes to these people and she goes, "These spiders are pouring out of me." That she goes to the townspeople. "Spiders are pouring out of me. I'm in pain. We can't deny the devil. He's gonna want the baby, like whatever." And then she goes, well, let's give him a baby. And the townspeople all turn to each other, and the one guy goes, "Let's kill you."
I was gonna say,
Which is what you think of, right?
Yeah.
And then there's this amazing moment where she walks directly up to the guy who says it, laughs, stands in front of him and goes, "The devil wants an unbaptized baby. So go ahead, strike me down. Because what do you think is going to happen to the person who touches me and cheats the devil of his prize?" And the guy who's holding the sword, like to kill her, his hand starts to twitch and itch, and he's like, "Oh no!" So this book, like one of the first
That is
supernatural
amazing.
horror books of all ever, right? Like gets this right better than most horror movies or books do now, right? Like it thought of what the obvious response should be, and then like
when he was writing that, they had like the same horror conversations today. Like, well, why don't you just fucking kill him and bury him?
Amazing, right? Totally amazing. So, like, I mean, I don't want to like go. I mean, the book is just amazing. I don't want to go through the whole thing, but like, but the just the way that it's built and the way they try to imprison the devil, and then when they felt like they win, there's like a round 2, which comes years later, where he gets back at more people again. Like it's just like this cycle of evil, and it's just amazing and like actually scary moments.
And the whole time, the king is just like in the shade.
Oh, he gets killed. Oh, that's one of the best parts.
I was gonna say, like,
one of the best parts. This the Lord, he the one who caused all the trouble. Like all the night, he's like, all my sheep are dying. Everything's going to hell, and they're like, the people who work under him are like, yeah, it's because of you. But they're not telling him that, right? He's like, we're gonna go. He's like, and this is one of my favorite parts of the whole book. He goes, go kill this spider thing, and then all the people who work for him are like, oh, you do it, and and he's like, what if this place gets attacked by dragons? You people can't even fight spiders. Fuck you, you're cowards. He's like, you gotta do it yourself. You do want a job done right, you gotta do it yourself. So he gets in his armor and he rides down the town, and he goes up to everyone. He's like, where's this spider? I want to confront it. And everyone he sees screams and runs from him. And he's like, where's the spider? And everyone's running from him. And he gets angry and he's running around. He's exhausting himself and he's injuring himself. He's in a frenzy looking for the spider. And every time he asks someone, I just want to fight this spider, or have you seen it? Where is it? They just scream and run. So then you're thinking, well, finally, the fact that he's an asshole is working against him. Like everyone's afraid of him, so they won't talk to him. The spider's on his head.
Oh.
It's sitting on his head, digging its legs into his brain through his helmet, burning legs of fire through his helmet, wrapping into his brain to strangle and kill him.
That is gnarly.
Yes.
I like that.
Totally. Amazing.
That is great.
Right, exactly.
All right, so that's a good one.
Still scary after all these
That's
years.
probably the best pick.
To me.
So, okay, so I'll go for my books, I guess is what we'll call it. So, a while back, a few years ago, I was working on a show in Ohio, and the producer, we were having lunch, and we started talking about horror, and I told him, I was like, yeah, I'm a real big fan of like Creepshow 1, Creepshow 2, Tales from the Crypt, and he goes, oh, Tales from the Crypt. And I was like, yeah. He's like, so anyways, he produced like a I think it was on like History Channel or like Discovery, but one of those channels. He did like a mini documentary on William Gaines and Al Fieldstein, the creators of the Tales from the Crypt comic, and he interviewed like I think he interviewed like George Romero, and I think he said he was going to interview Stephen King, but then like his accident happened, so like that was out of the picture. So after the show, I watched it. And I'd always watched Tales from the Crypt back when Sci-Fi was doing the reruns of it, because I could never get past the fucking intro when he pops up the scripts.
Right.
I couldn't do it.
Right.
I couldn't do it. And then one day, I remember they had a marathon of it, and like I just forced myself to sit through it. And this was like 7 or 8, maybe like really really young, so
Sure.
very reasonable to be scared of the
Sure.
the intro. So anyways, I sucked it up one day, and I started watching them, and like I completely fell in love with Tales from the Crypt. So I worked after talking to this guy about his, he made this little documentary about it. I went back and I watched it, and I was just looking at like how fucking cool like Tales from the Crypt comics were, like from like the fucking 50s, like
Amazing.
how great of stories those were, and how I still think like if you don't think they're scary, which I think some of them are still pretty fucking freaky. They at least have like this really fucking like gnarly messages of like basically don't be a dick.
Right.
Like don't be a dick and bad shit will happen to you.
Still applicable today.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, like I think the king from the story you just mentioned,
Right.
that could have been a Tales from the Crypt comic.
That twist is totally
that
Right.
twist is his.
And they had insects a lot, right? Like stuff like that all the time.
a bunch of gross shit. Like any sort of like like. I think anything went with those things. And I remember there was one that because they had talked about a bunch of the comics that sounded really cool. And I think they said there was one where they took it just a little too far. And I think it involved, I believe it was like a serial killer ended up getting I think he got killed by a baseball team or something like that, and they were using his body parts to play ball. And I think that was the one where they were like, yeah, we went a little far on that one, but I was like, that's so fucking cool. And like
the visuals in my head right now
just
are...
I mean, like but I just feel like, you know, if you're into anything horror, like you can't go wrong with those comics. They have vampires, werewolves, zombies,
right.
Like all this fucking cool shit. So I would say those two dudes, and the fact that they spawned. They spawned, you know, they had the Tales from the Crypt movie back in the 70s,
Yep.
which I finally got around to watching, and I didn't realize that the pilot episode for the HBO series was one of the stories in that one with the Santa Claus, the murderer dressed up as Santa Claus, which I remember that episode like scaring the shit out of me when I was little. So the fact that they wrote those, you know, in the 50s and 60s, like that those stories still hold up and can be redone time and time again.
Totally.
I think that absolutely, like, they're in. Like, they're in the Still Scary.
And I think that that's a really good point. I think one of the things you said that I think is probably going to be behind the scenes, like an important factor for what connects with people or stays scary throughout the years is having that ethos of anything goes.
Yeah.
It's those kind of people that create things that are, if they have talent and taste and that's combined with everything's on the table, we can do anything.
Exactly. And like that, you know, since I interviewed Romero, like, you know, Creepshow was heavily influenced to be made, you know, to get those films made. And those, I mean, Creepshow 1 and 2 are one of my favorite horror films. And all of that spawned because of like them doing these like, you know, short horror stories.
Right.
With like, really it's more about like the morale of or the moral of the stories with those people of like what did you do to deserve
right, totally.
to deserve that.
Yeah.
So I just
think it's a great pick. I think one of the amazing things is I'm not nearly as familiar with Tales of the Crypt as you are, but like I'm when I picture it, when you start talking about it, like I can see like the panels, I can see the artwork, I can see like the situations of the characters, and there are just visuals from that without even knowing the story. Like if you just open to a page, the story makes it worse, but like there are visuals where you're just like, you could tell it was no holds barred. They were visually in it to scare you. They were story wise, they were in it to scare you.
The artwork, there was a cover that I just really fucking loved. It was like the Crypt Keeper with like a little lantern reading some sort of manuscript like in the moonlight, and he's in the background, and then, you know, closer frame is just these hands coming out of the ground with a tombstone.
It's perfect.
And it's like the sense, you know, it's the perfect horror like image.
Totally. You
see that and you automatically know where you're at, where you're going with the story, what you're in for. And like even like the Tales from the Crypt cartoon growing up scared the shit out of me, and I loved it. I loved it. So I just think,
and the care they put into that is like, and when a team goes at things like that, like that's when you can tell they're really going to hold up. There's a comedy show called Show of Shows. It was done by Sid Caesar, and a lot of people are just amazed at how funny, how top notch the writing was, and how funny that it stayed over the years. And those people were intense. They just wanted to make good material, and they didn't give, like Sid Caesar. There's a story about him where he got an argument with a writer in the writer's room, and someone outside the room heard them arguing and came in. And when he came in, he saw that Sid Caesar had grabbed the writer and was holding him upside down out the window of like a 5-story building or whatever. He was yelling at him, like, because Sid Caesar was really strong, apparently.
That would take some strength.
But when your argument for like, no, I want this, it's gonna be funnier, it leads to someone hanging out a window, like you're like all in on making stuff happen, right? And I feel like the Tales from the Crypt people were like very similar. They were like, you know, we are going to make scary stuff for people, and
the thing I love about it is I really love like the bite-sized horror. Like you're in, you're out, you get it, you move the fuck on.
Totally.
And like you get the full, you know, the full horror, you know, aspect of it. And I don't know. I couldn't think of anyone else. Like those guys, I was like that's like probably one of the most influential.
That's great. Yeah, for sure.
Series.
You see their influence everywhere.
Yeah. So those were the books. So film.
Okay, wait. Before we plunge in, I'm just really. I just thought of something. I'm just really curious. I'm curious. It would be interesting to try to predict what exists relatively now in our era that's gonna be still scary after all these years, like 50 years from now?
50 years from now?
Like if you had to pick something from now, because obviously there's a lot of stuff that seems scary now that will probably not be scary 50 years from now for people. It's gonna date, just like a lot of things. Like you were saying, Frankenstein is really hard. The original Frankenstein is really hard to take seriously now as a scare, right?
Yeah.
It just faded. So whether from overexposure or just like, special effects, whatever you want to say. So like what there's things now that are going to fade, but what do you think comes from now that you feel pretty confident it's going to stay?
So since we did Still Scary from 7 years back, I'll pick some things from the 80s forward. Right off the bat, I think Evil Dead will hold up.
Yes.
I mean, it still holds up today, so I don't think that's going anywhere.
Right.
I still think if you show someone like a picture of Freddy Krueger, like they're not like, what a nice guy.
Right.
I would actually equate like seeing Freddy Krueger as the equivalent of like the unmasking of the Phantom.
Right.
Almost, because it's like he's a very unsettling looking guy.
Totally.
And I want to say, like, if I had to pick like a film that's like that I think will stay classic, I really want to pick The Babadook. Like, I just have a really good feeling that because it's another one of those, like, I think it's just very well written,
right,
and has like a very good message behind it that I think it will hold up.
I think that if the film or book or whatever you want to say about it, if it's playing with themes that don't have a much chance of going anywhere, then that really ups the odds.
Yeah.
Right. So like, a lot of the, scare from the skies 50s, like kind of movies read ridiculous now just because we have a different set of priorities and fears, and we don't take those kind of fears seriously. Like we're not expecting, 500-foot praying mantises.
No, not anymore.
Come down the street.
Hopefully not anytime soon.
You're looking behind me. Is there something?
There's.
I'm worried.
If anything, it's an adorable cat.
Okay, good. But so like the Babadook, like the theme of overwhelmed mother,
depression,
stress, depression, and even like the fairy tale book aspects of it, like really give it a good chance to like just be relevant.
And the thing is like I thought they were like, straight shooters with the story. Like they weren't trying to go like too fucking crazy. Like it was very reserved, like the way it was shot and edited. Like it wasn't they didn't try to do too much crazy shit. They were just like, here's the story, here's some crazy fucking like looking like, monster looking thing.
Right.
Boom, you're done. There you go. Totally. So I think it was very simplistic the way they did it, but like it was just so fucking well done.
Well, I'm glad you said something modern, because I'm trying to think of something like relatively contemporary, and when I was a kid, there was some place, I don't even remember what, near our house that would do a yearly raffle for something amazing, and my parents would make my brother and I fill out raffle tickets like 100 every weekend.
Oh, Jesus.
Until we were they were like, if there were 5,000 entries, we were like 4,900. And we won every year, right? So like, I think stuffing the ballot box also improves something's chance of being talked about and scary and remembered 50 years from now. So like, I'm thinking let the right one in, because it's got universal themes. It's amazingly made. It's authentically scary, and it stuffs the ballot box because it has 3 chances. There's a book. There's 2 movies. It's got 3 ways forward into, and there's a little known sequel that like whatever. But there's a semi sequel. But it's got so many high quality chances to stay relevant and known. And it's it's hard to imagine a scenario where it is not scary.
That's a good one,
right?
That's a good modern one. If I was, I don't want to just like name off all the recent horror movies that I liked.
Well, I was also thinking The Descent.
I was gonna say that.
Right.
That was what I was because we've had so many conversations about The Descent, and I think that's just another one of like, it's a pretty simple story, like just going through the fucking caves. There's monsters there. Get the fuck out.
Right.
And that's what we talked about. I had no idea that there was 2 different endings. One was the American version, and the European version. I saw the American version, which I liked.
Right.
Because she like survives at the end.
Right.
I don't like the fact that she's like, oh, never mind. I woke up and I'm still in the cave surrounded by these guys. Like, no. You dragged me through the mud.
Right.
Let me go home now.
Where's the payoff? Right.
Yeah. I just don't like their. I don't know. I didn't like that ending.
But I mean I mean claustrophobia as a fear, let alone being torn apart by blind mole people.
Yeah.
Those fears aren't going anywhere. Like there's people are still going to be claustrophobic 50 years from now, presumably.
And no one wants to get eaten by a bat.
No.
Or mole or whatever the hell they
Whatever,
were.
yeah. So-
Skinless thing. Ugh.
Yeah, I think. Anyway, so I was just really curious what you were betting on being scary future time, because it's a really there's things that I think that are scary now. Like it makes me wonder about something like It Follows is already pretty meta, right? So it relies on sort of knowing the meta nature of it. I suspect. And 50 years from now, who's going to be able to put all the meta layers together to experience it? You know, and then it may just play as extremely slow or disjointed or like whatever. I don't know if that holds up. You know,
It's always weird though. Like whenever like It Follows, there's a conversation about It Follows. Like the Babadook's always like right behind it.
Right.
Like I don't know, it's just because of like when they were released, like close to each other. But
yeah,
like
probably.
But anytime anyone mentions it, those two come. I always find that kind of interesting. Like for some reason, like those two are always like bumping heads with each other. Two completely different fucking movies.
Well, I think honestly, I think a small part of it is probably that we're being manipulated. Like there's a spider on your head. It's telling you to say that.
That scared the fuck out of me. I'm not gonna lie to you. My fucking heart dropped. Where's that?
You're being manipulated. No, I think we're being
I
manipulated.
got scared on our own podcast. How fucking lame is that?
No, it's awesome. I think we're being manipulated by the fact that the industry is looking, well, maybe even outside the industry, but like from outside the industry, peering down at the industry from on high, the money people are looking for the next home run, because there have been so many low budget and incredibly profitable home runs out of the horror genre, filmatically, right? So like I think they're looking for it. So there's just so much buzz around, which is the next one. Like Paranormal Activity was the next Blair Witch, right? And then everyone's looking for what's the next Paranormal Activity? Like what's the next low budget home run? And then, you know, Babadook had the additional, I guess, quality of from our point of view of being from like a different market, right?
Yeah.
So like it gives you more to talk about. Like not only is it well made and it's scary, like, you know, however you feel about it, but it's also from a different market, which gives you a different line of discussion on it. But everyone was looking, and I think they both kind of justified themselves as home runs.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, but I would imagine that
they were both
made
highly talked
amounts
about
of money compared to what they cost.
Like if you ask me like what other film did you like during like the times those were released, I don't know what was.
Right.
We were too busy talking about those.
Yeah, but I mean, I think a lot of that buzz spills over into pop culture and what people are talking about or whatever, and I think that's a big reason why because every year someone is going to get the buzz or try to fill the spot of what is the next blank.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I don't think any of the other movies around them qualified for the possibility of being the next blank. At least, you know, maybe they qualified for second, but they failed because there we are.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so we have we picked a few movies, and we also picked a few actors.
Yes.
That we think still hold up. So I named two that I think. I have one more, but we also have some films. What movies are you thinking?
Okay, so I only have one because I'm so obsessed.
And you have to go first because we're slightly suspicious. We're very
right, exactly. I'm so obsessed and focused on this movie that I can't consider any movies right now. So there's a movie. I think it's 60s. It's Japanese and it's called Onibaba. I'm probably not saying that right. And I think it's one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Mm-hmm. And additionally, it's one of the oldest Japanese movies of any kind. Right. So like when I was thinking like Still Scary all these years, I wanted to give the oldest things a chance before I consider the newer things. Right. So like, but then I would move on if the older things just didn't hold up or didn't have anything scary.
What's the title again? Because I'm going to probably call it Alibaba.
You go, feel free. It's fine. It's called Onibaba.
Onibaba?
Yep. So
Give us the rundown. What's the...
all right. So this movie is...
Let's see here.
It's a really, really small cast and a really streamlined, stripped down concept.
That mask is pretty freaky.
Yeah, yes, it is. But, and then also at a really important point, not. So, okay, so basically the way the spoiler alert, mega spoiler, the way the story is going to go is these, there's a civil war in Japan, and these people in this really, really, really small village, and it's particularly these two women, one older, one younger, they live just a horrible life scraping by. And there are constant small or large battles around where they live. And after the battles, there's wounded samurai warriors who are trying to escape, which is already dishonorable from a samurai warrior.
Yeah.
Like, and there's this incredible grassy field, which is, I'm telling you, this is the most beautiful. There is no horror movie shot more beautifully than this movie.
Gotcha.
Zero. Like it's impossible to be more beautiful. They're equal, but not more beautiful. This and there's a shout out to Criterion Collection because they did a restoration of it, which is the version I watched, which is just the movies don't look this good now. Right? So like these wounded warriors try to escape, and the women live near a incredible grassy plain. There's all these amazing shots of the grass in the wind, and et cetera. In the middle of it, there's what is apparently a bottomless black hole, and it's not big, right? But it's like Samara's well size.
Yeah. But like, still, there's a hole.
Right. Well, there actually is a bottom because we see it, but it's way down. So what they do is they find the wounded samurai warriors. They kill them because they're too hurt to defend themselves. They strip them and throw them in the hole, and then they sell their armor for food or swords or weapons. This is how they make their living.
That's a terrible living.
But arguably, it's how they have to make their living because everyone, and one of the older woman who's the titular character, I guess, because Onibaba roughly translates to demon hag, she says at one point, "What choice do we have? Like, you guys start all these wars. The society is tearing itself apart. You know, the structures are breaking down. Like, how a person has to live, right? How else are we gonna do it? So, this is how they make their living. But this is the amazing part. Okay, what happens is the women, basically a guy comes to town who was in the wars and now he's back, and he is interested in the younger girl of the pair, so they start dating. The older woman feels like she's going to lose her partner, so she doesn't want the younger girl dating this guy, right? Gotcha. So she's trying to keep this girl from sneaking out every night and going to meet this guy, but she can't do it. So one night, this samurai shows up, and he's wearing this incredibly hideous demon mask, right?
The one that I don't like.
Yeah. and the old woman has this incredible moment where the samurai is behind her. They're walking through the grass. He's threatening her. He's saying he's going to kill her. And unless she does what he wants, and in between this, he turns to her and he says, "Do you want to know why I wear this mask?" And when he says it to her, she like shrinks back a little, afraid, like scared of the reason why would someone wear this mask. Yeah. And he says, "I'm the handsomest man in Japan. I'm the best looking, and I didn't want my face to get fucked up while I was fighting.
Yeah.
So I'm wearing this mask to protect myself, right? So she goes, well, as a reward for doing everything you want me to do, show me your face. I've lived my entire life and never seen anything beautiful. Just show me your face. Mm-hmm. And he goes, shut up and walk or I'll kill you. So she doesn't get to see it. So she's walking.
He's too handsome.
He's walking. He's too handsome. She's walking. He's walking. They get to the hole. She jumps. He doesn't know it's there. He falls in and dies. Right? So she goes down into the hole and she pulls the mask off and he's hideous. Like he's his face is scorched. It's hard to get the mask off. Like, because he landed face down. So it like drove into his face possibly. Like
Wonderful.
And she strips him and she laughs and she goes, this is the handsomest man in Japan. And she takes all his shit to sell, right? She has a great meal the next day because he had really expensive stuff. You know? So the girl keeps sneaking out to date this guy that she doesn't want him to date. So one night she goes, I'm going to go on an overnight business trip, right? So she goes, the old lady. The young girl, she says, don't go out by yourself. You can't leave our home unprotected or whatever she says. The girl's like, yeah, I promise.
The hole ain't going to fill itself.
Right. So the old lady leaves and the old lady leaves. Night comes. The young girl's trying to restrain herself and she's like, no, why am I living this shitty life? Fuck this. I'm going to go see the guy. Like, I don't know what you're not the boss of me, right?
Yeah.
So she runs out. She's running through the grass to see the guy. And halfway to the guy's place, this demon raises up in the grass with the mask on.
Oh, that's so cool.
Which is the old lady, and scares her back to her own place. And this old lady starts doing this every night. And every morning, the girl is waking up and she's like, I want to go see my guy. I want to like have a date. I want to like whatever, but I can't get past this grass demon thing that is the old lady, right?
Jesus.
So there's this, and there's so much other things, like small things that happen that I can't even do justice to, like in the description. But to close out the plot, the old lady goes out one night in a rainstorm. The young girl sees her, decides, I'm not going to let this demon stop me, goes around her and goes to see her man. And her man says, there's no such thing as demons. She goes, I saw one. It's right behind me. And the guy's like, there's no such thing as demons. And then they're together and the old lady wearing the demon mask is just watching. And the demon mask, I swear, if you watch this movie, like the demon mask is scary and hideous at times. And there's the times where it's the saddest facial expression I've ever seen. And the mask is not changing, I think. I think it's the same mask.
But you're like
I don't
reading different emotions.
It's one of the most amazing optical tricks in a horror movie I've ever seen, or any movie I've ever seen. Like the woman's just standing. She realizes these two, she can't stop them. The girl's faster than her. She's not afraid of the mask enough to turn back anymore. She's not probably going to get another demon, other equipment walking by that she can collect to get scary, right? So the girl and the guy spend the night at the guy's place. The rainstorm continues, like whatever. And then the girl comes back home and everything's wet. And she tries to light this thing and it's hard to light up the hut. And she's, come back in the morning. But it's still, it's like, it's still dark, but it's soon to be sunrise. And she lights the thing and the light goes into the corner and the old lady is crouched in the corner like Blair Witch. And the girl's like, what's wrong? And the woman turns around and she's wearing the mask. And she's like, it won't come off. I can't get it. I can't take it off. She's like, it's scary.
So now she's the most handsome man.
I'm scared. And the girl's like, why are you wearing this demon mask? What, like, and she's like, I wanted to scare you. So, she confesses, like, whatever. And the girl's like, you deserve to have that mask stuck on. You deserve punishment. Like, torturing me, scaring me in the middle of the night, whatever. And the old lady's just following around, just like begging, please help me take this off. It hurts. It's starting to hurt. And the girl finally says, look, I'm going to help you take this mask off, but you got to surrender everything. Like you have to let me go see my man whenever I want. And the old lady's like, yeah, sure. She goes, nighttime. The old lady's like, sure. She's like, daytime. The old lady's like, sure. She's like, 7 days a week. The old lady's like, help me get this mask off.
Whenever.
So she tears the mask off and her face is destroyed. I mean,
gross.
She has no skin. She's eyes and like whatever's
everything
underneath.
else is gone.
Right. And she goes, it came off. It came off. And she goes to hug the girl, and the girl's like, ah! You're a demon for real. And then Jet's like,
How do I look? You look great.
and the old lady chases her. She's like, no, come back. We can't break up. We can't, like, we're a team. Like, I can't live. Like, I can't carry the bodies. I'm old. And the girl's like, you're a real demon. And she's chasing her. And then the last shot of this fucking movie is they get to the hole. Mm-hmm. The girl jumps and clears it. Mm-hmm. And the old lady's still screaming, I'm not a demon, I'm a human being. And she leaps into the air and she's over the hole and it cuts.
Oh, that's
amazing. This is amazing. Amazing. This movie is incredible. So anyway,
that's a good one.
There's the reason that I know this movie is still authentically scary. It's demonstrably scary for people. I've shown it to people who are not easily scared by it, and they're still scared or unnerved, and sometimes outright scared by this movie. And it's not that it's all scary; it's actually a pretty slow burn. But there are just some amazing moments buried in here that I think. Are not just scary, but like so. It's so funny that we talked about It Follows, right? Because the horror movie construct is you're running and something's chasing you, right?
Yeah.
So in this movie, there's this amazing moment where the old lady, the next morning after she scared the girl, they're doing some menial job, some work. They're digging some in the ground or sifting flour or something. And the girl turns to, she's like, do. She goes, so, it's a good morning. And the old lady's like, yeah, it's a good morning. She's like, so do you believe in demons? And the old lady is like, yeah, I think demons are real, but they're only real in hell.
Yeah.
And the girl goes, no, I think they're real here too. And the old lady, everything is shot from far.
Yeah.
And then the old lady goes, why do you think demons are real? Have you seen one? And the camera goes close up straight on her face. She is the demon.
So they're telling you way ahead.
Right. She totally, this is like, so what is visually one of the creepiest scenes in the movie is when the samurai with the demon mask is walking towards the hole behind the old lady. But for one of the first times I can think of in any horror movie I've ever seen, and ironically, because this movie's so old, she's worse than he is. She's scarier than he is. And he's trailing her. She's not being chased. She's leading him to death.
Gross.
Like, you think about how many horror movie icons, they don't lead you to death.
No.
They hunt you down, right? So, like, just for the fact that this movie did it first, did it so well, did things that other horror movies haven't even thought to do, and is just incredibly still scary and gripping and intense, totally my vote.
Well, that's a very good choice. Mine is not going to be as deep.
Sorry.
I have a very no, because now I want to watch it. Mine both revolve. Okay, so this is going to be weird. Both of mine involve people trying to grab me while running away. I don't know fucking why. That is just the biggest fear. The fact that you're running and someone's like leaping to grab you, that scares the shit out of me. I don't know if it's because of like video games that I've played before or just like, playing tag as a kid.
Sure.
So I actually have two, both for the same-ish reasons. So I actually, when I found out about these, it was back when I was in like middle school, right when I was ramping up my fucking like passion for horror. Because like when I was, younger than that, it was Universal Monsters, and then I was like starting to get into like the more bigger stuff. And it was great timing because around that time, Bravo would do their top 100 horror movie moments, which was like I would watch that on fucking repeat. Like whenever it was on, I watched it, and there was two movies that qualified for our list today. Still scared after all these years, and both of them are they were both. One of them was Wait Until Dark,
great movie,
and the other one was Night of the Hunter.
Great,
both great, just as in and out of themselves. But the Wait Until Dark, out of like the top 100, and they even did like 30 scarier moments. So it was like even like out of 130 fucking like movie clips that they showed that were scary. Wait Until Dark and Night of the Hunter they're still with me. Just because Wait Until Dark, out of fucking nowhere does that fucking jump scare
Amazing.
come out of nowhere. And just the way it
The
was.
only jump scare I've ever seen that I thought was better executed than that, in the way that it was executed, where some jump scares are like it comes from a direction you don't expect. Some jump scares are scary because they happen faster than you think they're going to.
Yeah.
Which is what that one is. And the only jump scare that is like that to me is the Exorcist 3 nurse.
Oh yeah, where she walks behind her like the fucking.
But other than that, like those two are the.
And it's so fucking unnerving. Like, so like just to set up the scene, Audrey Hepburn is blind in this apartment, and I believe she has a doll or something with like heroin in it. And these crooks are trying to come in. Her husband leaves, so the crooks are like, hey, we're gonna break in and steal the doll. So she's there. She's blind as a bat, can't see shit. And the set of the scene, like all the fucking lights are out. She's like wandering around, like patting everything, trying to get the fuck out of her apartment. And like the frame is like, I think the frame is like panning like left to right, and she's walking from left side of the frame to right side of the frame. And by the time she's on the right side of the frame, about to fucking exit, the fucking crook jumps left side of fucking frame, like fucking Olympic style, jumps to leap at her. And it's just the way he's like in the air, like stretched out like fucking Air Jordan, like trying to grab her. Like that never left my fucking mind. I was like, holy shit, like that's terrifying. And like out of nowhere does that shit come from?
You could take anyone who thinks that old movies are boring, and you could put them in a dark room at midnight, and you could just cue up that scene and play it, and it will scare the shit out of you.
Yeah, because you don't see that coming. Right. Like I think it's a very effective jump scare. I know like a lot of the horror community, like they're very like poo about the jump scares.
Well, it's just because it was overused, but it wasn't overused when they did it.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. And I think that is just fucking.
It's great.
It's just great. It still scares the shit out of me. Like when I watch the clip, like I still like tense up. Mm-hmm. And then both of them revolving around dolls, coincidentally. Night of the Hunters.
Look at that. Yep.
Night of the Hunters. So that's weird.
That is weird. That is really weird. And the fact that the green hunter was so key in the Black Spider, I feel like we have a whole hunter mini theme going on.
This is a theme within a theme.
Right.
It's the scene where they're like in the basement or something like that, and she's with Robert Mitchum.
Yep.
And I just remember the way old movies like sound was recorded, like it has that weird sound to it. But I just remember that little girl being like, "It's in my doll, it's in my doll," and then it's like the doll, of course, and then. She like fucking Karate Kids him like right in the fucking face, and then it's the scene where she's running up the stairs and he's like Frankenstein fucking chasing her, like trying to grab her legs. I just like that makes my back like like freeze up. I'm like, ugh, go away.
You really don't like that feeling.
Don't do that. That scene, I don't know. Both of those just really freak me the fuck out. I don't like being chased.
Right.
I don't like any of that. You know what? I know what it is. That makes me not like being chased.
What is it?
It just fucking hit me. So. When I was in freshman year of high school, back in Ohio, there was a corn maze that basically like you could just show up there, sign in. They give you like $20 to like hide around the maze and scare shit out of people in like your shitty mask. And I think they called it like the Kruger maze or something like that, because I think like legend has it that there was like a guy dressed up as Freddy Krueger who had his mask made by the guy who did the original apparently. I don't know if that's true or not, but I just remember that was the legend thing. Like that was cool. Right. And it was around the time, it was like a few years after Texas Chainsaw Remake came out, which I love. And there was a guy there built like Leatherface, had a chainsaw and like the mask from like the the 2000s remake, which is scary as fuck. And there's a scene once you made it past the horror maze, the corn maze. It was a straightaway, very black, and he would stand in front of a truck. The headlights would come on and start beeping, and he would like rip his chainsaw. So all you saw was a silhouette of Leatherface. And my friends knew that scared the fuck out of me. They knew I shouldn't have told them. I went in knowing that I was scared of Leatherface, and they told him that. And he chased me around. So I think that's probably part of the reason why. Like, I'm working at the maze, and they're scaring the fuck out of me. Like, how fucked up is that?
Yeah, but I mean that's just a testament to how memorable a good scare is. I mean,
Yeah, and I just don't like being chased, jumped at, people grabbing me, and I think that's why those two
Makes
make my
total
list,
sense.
because that connects with everyone. No one likes to be fucking
No.
jumped at. So I think those
and there's
two.
a lot of horror movies that play with that elevation theme, like The People Under the Stairs, like kind of thing.
Oh,
like
God.
and
That had one too.
And Night of the Hunter, like no one did it better. I mean, that amazing story about Night of the Hunter is Charles Lawton. It's the only movie he ever directed, and he's just a genius. As a matter of fact, Laurence Olivier, who a lot of people consider the greatest actor who ever lived, said that Charles Lawton is the only genius of acting he ever met.
Gotcha.
So this guy was just packed with talent. It's the only movie this guy ever made for some reason, but he could have been as great as like Orson Welles or whatever. And he did this movie almost like storybook. It's really flat. Like a lot of the scenes are flat. Like you see people going by on a river and you see people like whatever. And that scene should have that's so much of the movie is flat, and that scene has so much dimension.
Yeah.
There's so many spaces that are menacing and things that can go wrong, and it's just like the first full-on moment where you're like, wow, like the world is just bad, and like you can just get dragged down, and like that's a great choice. It's ironic considering who I chose for my actor.
All right, so let's hit the act.
Right.
Let's talk actors, and then we'll wrap it up. We're going a little over, but doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You want to go with the actor first?
No, you go with the actor first.
Okay, so I didn't go with any of the Universal horror people. I don't know why. I didn't want to cop. I didn't want to do a horror podcast and every podcast be me being like fucking Boris Karloff. That's my favorite. That's my favorite guy. So,
Right.
but then I went with the Hammer.
Excellent.
I went with Peter Cushing.
Yeah. He's amazing.
And to be honest, even though I haven't seen very many of his films, I see his face and I automatically know what he's all about.
Totally.
I automatically know what he's in for. I mean, obviously, when I see him, I always think of Star Wars first.
Sure.
But then I think of all the other hammery
Right.
horror films. But
Right.
I just think I think he's just one of those faces that when you see him, you just kind of know what you're in for.
He was so ahead of his time. Like the old Dracula motif, like when you saw it as a stage play or whatever, it was just black and white. Like Dracula was bad and Van Helsing was good. That's not the taste of our society. Are we really like the way Anthony Hopkins plays Van Helsing and Bram Stoker's Dracula? He's almost as creepy, if not creepier, than Dracula himself.
Yeah.
Because we like anti-heroes and complicated like mixtures of traits, like whatever. And Peter Cushing was just naturally so intense looking that even when he was playing a good guy, it was uneasy almost.
Yeah.
He looked skeletal a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Very
Like,
thin in the face.
Yeah. And just like the brain, like Pinky and the Brain style. And he just looked intense and still like cultured and mannerly and like whatever, but like he injected that. He's the transition between like the purely good guy and then like the good guy with complications, right?
He just looks so cool though. I was thinking about that when I was walking to get coffee today. I was like, I would team up with Peter Cushing to take out some vampires.
For sure. And his acting chops are incredible. Like he's just like, he's
he's just one of those I don't want to say characters, but like you just look at him and like you get it. I know that I'm way oversimplifying my
but
pick.
it's like a Peter Lorre situation, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you just look at him and you like, this is. I mean, there are some actors who pride themselves in being nondescript, like they could play like all kinds of characters and like whatever. But like, there's some that are just stamped by like how they look, how they carry themselves, with just being totally unique out of the gate. And he's definitely one.
He just always seemed like cool and collective
Totally,
about it.
yeah.
So that's my pick.
That's awesome.
That's my pick.
I went
Boiled
with,
down.
I went with Robert Mitchum. Man, that guy could play scary. Holy shit! Like he's just the thing is that there's a great. I'll paraphrase it, but there's a great thing I read in a biography of him where it said that Charles Lawton called Robert Mitchum and said, "There's this small part in this movie, Night of the Hunter," which he didn't know what that was yet. He hadn't read the script. He goes, "There's a small part in the movie that I need to fill. I think I want someone to play, but I just want to let you know that this character is just an absolute terrible, sinister, horrible shit of a person." Mm-hmm. And Mitchum responded with, "Present. I'm here. You called the right number." Like, and one of the reasons that the still scary after all these years thing, like, there are so many movies that are ruined by like the Jurassic Park computer effect, right? Like, you cannot take the computers in Jurassic Park seriously anymore. They dated so fast that I went to see a screening of it, and the theater was convulsed with laughter when like the Unix system came on at the end. So some things date really fast, and there are great actors in great horror movies and great scenes that just have become faintly ridiculous over time because the costuming was over the top, or they played it over the top, or whatever. But Robert Mitchum, the way he underplayed everything, and it was always stripped down. And I saw the forum online where people were arguing back and forth about which is scarier, Cape Fear or Cape Fear remake, right? No, the Cape Fear or the remake. Who did it better, De Niro or whatever? And the theme that people kept blurting out, even despite themselves, was, maybe there are a lot of moments in the De Niro Cape Fear that are scarier as moments, but it's too over the top. Like, Robert Mitchum is believable that he's not playing a guy. That guy exists. That guy's down the street. That guy, like, everyone, every major city has that guy in it. And he's doing bad things right now while we're doing this podcast. Like, that guy exists, and he nailed it. And
he's worse than the spider on my head.
And that's the thing, is he's they're like, even if even if you can't stand watching black and white, which is, don't call me then, but if you can't, like, even if you can't stand watching old movies, or you feel like they're paced slow, or you feel like the dialogue is corny, or you feel like whatever, when it gets to the scene of Robert Mitchum, like, cornering someone and just menacing them, it's primal, and he does it like so believable, and like,
it's not over the top.
Oh, and it's a little bit of a charm, which makes it worse. Like, like,
because even just looking at his face, you're like, he's not an ugly dude. You could just, and that's the thing, is like, just looking at a photo of him right now, I can already tell he probably smells like aftershave. he's gonna slowly.
That's a great way to put it.
He looks like the type of, like, old school cat who's just gonna be like, you want to be his friend, but he's gonna beat you up. So you're like, fine, I guess, if this wins your friendship.
That's awesome. Yeah, totally. But he was in one of the greatest film noirs of all time, out of the past, which is out of the scope of our podcast. But he there's a line, I forget exactly how it goes, but basically, they used it as the subject of the biography of I read, where his character in that movie, she basically tells him, like, if we don't do this, or you don't do this, or you don't toe the line for this, like, whatever, the whole world's going to go to hell. You're going to live a life of pain, like, whatever. And he's just like, baby, I don't care. And that, like, is the him. Like
no fucks
and you
given.
can see that in Cape Fear, like, when there's this, he's sitting down, and, like, that's one of the great twists in Cape Fear, like, because horror directors and like thriller, like, the way they frame things is, when they want the character to be intimidated, the character's small, and the character doing the intimidating is big, and they're shooting looking down, right? Or the character that's being intimidated is looking up, right?
Yeah.
Well, Gregory Peck's character is like, walks in, and he's like a lawyer, whatever. He's like, you do this or that, or stay away. I've never seen anyone as bad as you, like, whatever. And he's standing, and he's looming over, basically shadowing Robert Mitchum in the table in the restaurant. And Robert Mitchum's looking up like I'm not even listening to you. Like, he's threatening him from, he doesn't have to even get up.
This is
to
below
do it.
me.
Like, right? He's like, it's amazing. Like, the way he plays is stellar. I think he's still scary now. I think he's gonna be scary 50 years from now. I just think he's amazing.
It's funny how we always have something like in the same realm.
Yeah, I know, right?
Of where of where of where we think stuff is still scary. Anyways, all right. Till next time.
Bye bye.
See ya.